Hello and welcome to Upstack America's Oracle EBS Financial Functional Training. My name is Bob and I'm the lead senior consultant for Upstack America. And with me today, I have Victor, who is also a senior consultant. And today we are handling General Ledger Lesson 30. And Victor, please walk us through.
Thank you, Bob, for the introduction. And welcome to Lesson 30 of our Oracle Financial Functional Training. We are going to continue with the topic of security rules. We discussed the previous lesson what security rules are and what they help us to do, and we saw that they help us to deny or grant access to certain values in any segment to users, okay? And we saw how to create security rules. We define security rules, then we assign them to a responsibility, and then we assign that responsibility to the user. And so when that user logs in using the responsibility for which those security rules have been defined, they will only be able to see those values for which the security rules allow, okay? And that is the navigation to create security rules. So for this lesson, I want us to focus on a compare and contrast of security rules and data access sets, which is what we've been looking at in our past few lessons. We have seen how both of them can be used to give restricted access to data to users. And we saw that they both have their peculiarities and also some similarities in different areas. So we are going to go through this list of features and how they compare or contrast to each other between security rules and the data access set. So just to start off, the purpose of the data access set we already mentioned is to give access to users to a ledger. Okay, that is why we assign a data access set to a responsibility so that users can be able to access the data in a ledger. However, using the balancing and the management segment, we can now give restricted access to the information on that ledger. Okay. Security rules, on the other hand, is just for that, is security rules. It's purposefully to grant or deny access or to control what data is available to what user on the ledger. Okay, so that's just to start off. Now we have seen that for security rules, we have just two levels of security, if you can call it that. So we can either have a user having a read and write access or no access at all. Okay, so this is in contrast to the data access set, where we have three levels, where a user can have a read and write access to a ledger or to a certain balancing segment or management segment, or they can have read-only access, where they're able to do inquiries or they are able to see that information on Enter Journal screen, but they're not able to enter whatever values have been restricted from them. And then the last one is no access, where you don't give a a user read or write access or read-only access to certain data on the ledger. So that's the first thing. The other thing we have seen is that both of them, they require a responsibility. So once you define a data access set, you assign it to a responsibility, okay, so that now users can be able to view that ledger, which is governed by the rules which you have defined for that data access set. And the same for security, for the security rules, where you define the security rules and then assign them to a responsibility. On keeping with this topic of responsibility, for security rules, you can have the relationship between security rules and responsibility. It can be one-to-one or it can be many-to-one. So you can have multiple security rules assigned to one responsibility, and the effect will be each security rule will have its own effect, and then combined they will have like a combined effect on that responsibility in as far as what the user can be able to see or to enter. Okay, and then for the data access set, there's a one-to-one relationship to a responsibility. So one data access set can only be assigned to one responsibility. Okay. So the other thing that what we saw is a difference is that for security rules, we enter values as include or exclude ranges. Okay. So this is the same way we did for the cross validation. So we enter values as include and exclude ranges, but for the data access set, we only include values. Okay, so we include values or we select values and then we select the type of access privilege we want to give them. All right, so the values that are included are the ones which we are able to access either with read or write or read only. The values which are okay, let me put it this way. The values which are included are the ones which are affected. Okay. Those which are excluded, I mean, in reference to values in a segment, then you cannot access them. Okay. But when you're defining, you just enter the values as inclusion. So there's no this include exclude format for the data access set. The other thing is that for security rules, well, they display custom messages. So you define the message that the user is going to see if they violate the security rules. But for data access set, it's a system message. That's default when the user tries to violate the rules that have been set about by the data access set. We have also seen that security rules, you can have hierarchical security, and we defined what hierarchical security is, where if you have parent values, and under those parent values you have children values or child values. When you select hierarchical security, then you are including the child values when you select the parent values. Okay, so if you enter the parent values in your security rules component, then the child values will also be affected by that security rule. But if you do non-hierarchical, then the parent values and the child values are treated individually or independently. Okay. For data access set, it also supports hierarchical security. So when you include a value in your data access set screen, when you're defining it, then it will also include the child values if that value is a parent value. So both of them, they are going to support hierarchical security. The other thing which is a difference, is that security rules, they work at the screen level to hide values. All right. So what does that mean? For example, when we did our responsibilities, which we used for security rules, the data access set that we assigned to those responsibility was the full ledger access. All right, remember the data access set for our primary ledger. However, with security rules, we are prevented from seeing certain values in the account segment. Okay, although the data access set grants that assigned to that responsibility is the full ledger access. So technically, you should be able to see everything or enter any value in any segment. But security rules, they prevent that, so they hide those values at the screen level. Okay. However, for the data access set, it works at the ledger level. So when you create the data access set, you specifically show what values are going to be displayed. Okay. For the particular segment that you've used, either whether it's the balancing segment or the management segment. So technically, what that means is that this is like it's working through the back end. Okay, well, this is just working at the screen level to hide these values from users who are not supposed to see them. Now, this will have its own implications, which means that data access set is a more powerful tool as far as security is concerned when you want to restrict information from end users. Okay. Users who do not have full access will not be able to carry out some of the functions in GL, and we already talked about this, like managing periods. They won't be able to manage periods. They won't be able to create summary accounts or budget versions. So this is a more powerful security feature compared to security rules. Security rules, it does hide some information. It protects some GL features, although not all of them. So for example, we saw that at the enter journal screen, security rules, they prevent us from seeing any lines that contain values for which those security rules have denied access. We saw this example with the journal that we entered, where one line was hidden, although the journal contained 2 lines. So that those are just a couple of similarities and differences between security rules and data access sets. So now, as a functional consultant, your part of your work will be to advise the client on which two of these features works best depending on their needs. Okay. So, for example, if the chart of accounts has a segment that can be declared as a management segment, and of course it's going to have a balancing segment, then we can use the data access set. We can also use security rules in this situation, because security rules can be implemented for any segment, regardless of whether it's a natural account or a balancing segment or intercompany segment. So at that point, you have those two options available to you. However, in the situation where there's no group of users that will be allowed full access. Okay, so supposing for the client there's no group of users that has full access to the ledger, or nobody is going to be given the rights to see everything in the ledger, then think about it. What options do you have? So the option that you have is security rules. Why? Because in order to implement data access sets, you need at least one group of users or one person who has full access to the ledger, because you need full access to the ledger in order to carry out some very vital functions, such as what? Managing periods. So if you can't open periods, then there's no point of maintaining a ledger. So in the situation where, for example, there's no group of users that is going to be allowed to have full access to the ledger, then the option of data access set is removed. You don't have that. You don't have that option. Okay. So these are some of the issues that you need to think about and discuss with a client as a consultant, so that you can come up with the best solution to their needs or to their problem. The other thing that you need to consider is like what we have talked about here: the read and write access, and the read write and read and no access. So for example, you need to tell them that when you use data access set to restrict some values in value sets, then you will have a read write option, you will have a read option, and then no access at all. But for security rules, you only have everything, it's all or nothing. So you either have read and write, or you have no access at all. So those are just some of the issues that you need to consider as a consultant when you're advising your client. But all in all, those are the some of the features that are comparable or are different between security rules and the data access set. So now we have completed this topic of security rules and data access set. You can play around in your own implementation and do various versions of security rules, or create different data access sets, and see how those affect the kind of information that you are able to view or other functionalities. However, that is the end of this topic. And Bob, unless you have something to add, I think that's a good place to end the lesson.
I think we're good. Thank you so much, Victor.
Thank you.